Ancient and medieval periods. Oysters have been exploited since ancient times in Japan, with records showing that oyster consumption existed since the Jomon period, circa 10,300 BC. Oysters were originally harvested wild from coastal waters, but later, as demand increased, farming techniques began to be developed. Developments in the Edo period. During the Edo period, 1603 to 1868, oyster farming became a popular occupation in many coastal areas of Japan, especially in the Seto Inland Sea. Oysters were not only consumed locally but were also transported to other regions of the country. Modern period. From the Meiji period, 1868 to 1912, onwards, Japan began to modernize its aquaculture industry, including oysters. Oyster farming techniques from Western countries were imported and improved, increasing the production and quality of oysters. Hiroshima gradually became the largest oyster farming center in Japan. Pacific oysters, Crassostrea gigas. This is the most popular oyster in Japan, accounting for the majority of domestic oyster production. Pacific oysters have a rich flavor, thick meat, and are a staple in many traditional dishes. Wagaki oysters, Crassostrea nippona. These are larger oysters that are often farmed in deep water. Iwagaki oysters have thick shells, sweet meat, and are often eaten raw. Sashimi, Kumamoto oysters, Crassostrea sikamea, a smaller, sweet oyster that is often farmed in the southern part of Japan. This type is popular in Western-style dishes in Japan. Geographical and climatic conditions. Japan has a long coastline and many bays, mangroves, and estuaries, creating ideal conditions for oyster farming. Seawater temperatures range from 10 to 20 degrees Celsius, creating a good living environment for oysters. Hiroshima. This is the largest oyster-producing region in Japan, accounting for about 60% of the country's total oyster production. The seawater in Hiroshima is moderately saline and rich in nutrients, making it the perfect environment for oysters to grow. Miyagi, another famous area with clean and cold seawater conditions, suitable for cultivating high-quality oysters. Hokkaido. Oysters grown in Hokkaido are often large in size and have a strong flavor. Because the seawater here is colder and richer in oxygen raft culture, This is the most popular method in Japan, especially in Hiroshima. Baskets containing young oysters are suspended under rafts floating on the water surface. The oysters will grow in nutrient-rich seawater, and the baskets help protect them from natural predators. Natural culture. Oysters are released freely into favorable sea conditions without the use of cages or baskets. This method is often used for large oysters such as iwagaki oysters, allowing them to grow naturally and have good meat quality. Bottom cage culture method. This is another method in which oysters are grown in cages placed on the seabed. This method is often used in deep, oxygen-rich water areas, allowing oysters to grow quickly and evenly. Water quality control. Water quality control is an important factor in oyster farming. Parameters such as salinity, temperature, and dissolved oxygen content need to be checked regularly to ensure optimal conditions for oysters' disease prevention. Oysters are susceptible to bacterial and parasitic diseases. Therefore, farmers need to take preventive measures such as water treatment, controlling the amount of oysters in an area to avoid overcrowding, and using biological methods to minimize risks. Managing natural food sources. Oysters are filter feeders, so managing the water environment and ensuring there is enough natural food, phytoplankton, is essential. Harvesting time. Oysters are usually harvested in winter, when meat quality is at its peak. During this season, oysters are larger and firmer than in summer. Harvesting process. Harvesting oysters involves pulling cages or baskets out of the water, checking the size and quality of each oyster. Those that do not meet the standards will be released back to continue growing. Harvesting tools. Tools such as nets, draglines and baskets are used to harvest oysters. In some areas, modern technology such as automated tractors are also applied to increase efficiency. Fresh oyster processing. Post-harvest processing. Immediately after harvesting, oysters are cleaned to remove sand and bacteria. This process usually includes washing with clean seawater or cold fresh water. Storing fresh oysters. Oysters are stored in cold conditions to keep them fresh until they are processed or sold. Some establishments use rapid freezing technology to extend the storage time without losing quality packaging and shipping. After cleaning and inspection, oysters are packed in cold boxes or crates. To ensure quality, oysters are usually shipped quickly, within 24 hours of harvest. Grilled oysters, kaki-yaki. This is a popular way of cooking, especially at oyster festivals. Oysters are grilled directly over charcoal. The shells are opened and the meat inside is grilled until it has an attractive golden color. Kaki fry. A popular dish in Japanese restaurants, oysters are dipped in flour, egg, and breadcrumbs, then deep fried. This dish is often served with tartar sauce or soy sauce. Steamed oysters. Oysters are steamed with sake and some spices such as green onions, ginger, and kelp, retaining the original flavor and natural sweetness. Oyster sashimi. Fresh raw oysters are thinly sliced and served with wasabi and soy sauce. This dish is especially popular with iwagaki oysters, which have a sweet and tender texture. Sushi and sashimi. Oysters are often used in sushi and sashimi dishes, where they are served raw and accompanied by condiments such as wasabi, soy sauce, and ginger. The combination of the fresh flavor of the oysters with these condiments creates a unique culinary experience. Kaki nabe, oyster hot pot. A traditional Japanese hot pot in which oysters are cooked with vegetables, tofu, and mushrooms in a hot pot. The broth is usually made from dashi stock and seasoned with miso or soy sauce. Sauce kaki fry. This dish is a favorite in Western cuisine in Japan. The oysters are deep fried and served with tartar sauce, French fries, or salad. Hiroshima Oyster Festival. This is the largest oyster festival in Japan, held annually in the winter. Visitors can enjoy grilled oysters, fried oysters, and other oyster dishes. The festival also features entertainment, music, and stalls selling local products. Miyajima Oyster Festival, held on Miyajima Island, famous for its Itsukushima shrine and oysters. Visitors can enjoy fresh oysters, grilled oysters, and other traditional dishes. The festival also features local cultural and artistic performances. Role in the local economy. The oyster industry plays an important role in the economies of coastal areas such as Hiroshima and Miyagi. Oyster farming and processing create thousands of jobs for local people and contribute to the local budget domestic market. Oysters are a popular product in Japan, widely consumed in restaurants, supermarkets, and seafood markets. The variety of ways to prepare oysters and their high nutritional value make them an important food in Japanese cuisine main markets. Japanese oysters are exported to many countries, with major markets including the United States, China, Korea, and European countries. Japanese oysters are popular for their high quality, fresh taste, and strict quality control procedures. Export process. Oysters are harvested, cleaned, packaged, and shipped under refrigerated conditions to ensure freshness and quality when they reach international consumers. Food safety and hygiene standards are strictly followed to meet the import requirements of other countries. Oyster farming can affect the marine environment, including impacts on water quality, seabed ecosystems, and biodiversity. The use of artificial feed and oyster waste can also cause pollution problems if not properly managed. Organic farming. Some oyster farms in Japan have switched to organic farming methods, without the use of chemicals and antibiotics, to protect the environment and improve product quality. Advanced biotechnology is used to develop disease-resistant oyster varieties, enhance growth and reduce the need for chemicals. International cooperation. Japan participates in international cooperation projects to share experiences and technologies in sustainable aquaculture, helping to raise standards and protect the global marine environment. Management of farming density. One of the most important factors in oyster farming is management of farming density. If the density is too high, oysters will have to compete with each other for food and space, leading to slow growth. And increased risk of disease. Farming density needs to be considered careful calculation based on environmental conditions, water quality and the type of oysters being farmed. Breeding season care. The oyster spawning season usually takes place in the summer, when the water temperature is high. During this time, oysters consume a lot of energy to produce eggs and sperm, leading to a decrease in meat quality. Farmers need to control the water temperature and feed amount to ensure that oysters can recover quickly after the spawning season. Combating pathogens. Oysters are susceptible to bacteria, viruses, and parasites. One of the most common diseases is red mouth disease, caused by Vibrio bacteria. To prevent this, farmers often use measures such as adjusting stocking density, controlling water temperature, and occasionally applying water treatment methods using ozone or UV to kill pathogenic bacteria. Feed management. Oysters are filter feeders. They take in seawater and filter out food particles such as algae and microorganisms. Managing the amount of natural food in the culture environment is very important. In areas with poor water quality, artificial food can be added, but care must be taken to avoid polluting the environment and affecting the surrounding ecosystem. Integrated farming. This is a farming model that combines oysters with other aquatic species such as seaweed or fish. This model helps create a natural ecosystem in which oysters and other species interact with each other, optimizing the use of nutrients and space. For example, seaweed can absorb organic waste from oysters, while oysters help filter the water and create favorable conditions for seaweed to grow. Biotechnology in selective breeding. Research centers in Japan are developing new oyster varieties that are resistant to disease and grow faster. This technology involves using genetic engineering to select oyster individuals with desirable characteristics and crossbreeding them. This improves productivity and product quality without the use of chemicals or antibiotics. Modern harvesting methods. In recent years, many oyster farming areas in Japan have switched from manual harvesting to using machines. Automatic tractors can pull cages or baskets of oysters up from the seabed quickly and efficiently, minimizing the time the oysters are exposed to the outside environment, thereby maintaining the freshness of the oysters post-harvest. Quality inspection. After being pulled up, the oysters will be thoroughly inspected to remove diseased or substandard oysters. This inspection process includes examining the oysters under light to detect parasites or abnormalities. Oysters that meet the standards will be transferred to the processing or packaging process. High-tech cleaning process. After harvesting, oysters need to be cleaned to remove impurities and bacteria. Some facilities use a recirculating seawater cleaning system, in which clean seawater is continuously pumped through the oyster tanks to remove impurities. This system is often combined with ozone or ultraviolet (UV) treatment to kill bacteria without affecting the quality of the oyster meat. Smart packaging. To ensure that oysters remain fresh when they reach consumers, some facilities have adopted smart packaging technology. This includes the use of special packaging that can regulate internal humidity and temperature, as well as sensors that monitor time and transportation conditions. This technology helps to extend the shelf life while maintaining the flavor and quality of the oysters. Sterilization of live oysters. In some cases, especially when exporting to markets with strict food safety requirements, fresh oysters will be sterilized using low-temperature methods or irradiation. This process kills bacteria without affecting the texture and flavor of the oyster meat. Grilled oysters with cheese, kaki gratin. This is a popular dish in Japanese restaurants, especially in Western cuisine in Japan. Oysters are placed in the shell, then covered with a layer of mozzarella or cheddar cheese, accompanied by a little fresh cream and spices, and then grilled until the cheese melts and turns golden brown. Kaki no miso zuke. Miso marinated oysters. This is a traditional Japanese dish in which fresh oysters are marinated with miso, soybean paste, and some spices such as sake, mirin and sugar. The oysters are then cooked or grilled, creating a rich and sweet flavor from the miso salt. Grilled oysters. Kaki no shio yaki. Oysters are sprinkled with salt and grilled directly over charcoal, creating a simple yet sophisticated flavor. The salt grilling method helps retain the natural flavor of the oysters, with a hint of saltiness from the sea salt. Hiroshima oysters. This is the most famous place for oyster dishes. Local specialties include Hiroshima-style okonomiyaki, a Hiroshima-style pancake, in which oysters are stir-fried with cabbage, soba noodles, and the pancake batter. Hiroshima oysters are also used in hot pot dishes such as doju nabe, where oysters are cooked with fish, mushrooms, and vegetables. Hokkaido oysters. In Hokkaido, oysters are often eaten raw as sashimi or used in ishikari nabe, a local hot pot specialty, where oysters are cooked with salmon, vegetables, and miso. The region is also famous for kaki zosui, an oyster porridge where oysters are cooked with rice, eggs and dashi stock. Miyagi oysters. Miyagi is famous for kaki soba, where oysters are cooked and served with soba noodles in a hot broth. Another dish is kaki don, where oysters are deep-fried and served with rice, vegetables and a special sauce symbol of fertility. In many folklores, oysters are considered a symbol of fertility and good health. The Japanese believe that eating oysters in winter will help increase vitality and maintain health, especially for men. Legends and folk tales. In some regions, oysters appear in folk tales and legends as guardians of the sea. A popular legend in the Hiroshima region tells of a sea goddess who gave oysters as a gift to help her people fight poverty and disease. Oysters in traditional festivals. In addition to large festivals such as the Hiroshima and Miyajima oyster festivals, many coastal villages in Japan hold smaller festivals to honor oysters. These festivals usually take place in winter, when oysters are at their best. And include religious ceremonies, traditional musical instruments, and folk games. Trade barriers. Although Japanese oysters are highly regarded for their quality, exports still face many barriers, especially strict food safety standards from major markets such as the EU and the United States. To overcome these barriers, Japan has invested in improving preservation and sterilization technology, as well as collaborating with international experts to improve product standards. Market expansion opportunities. With the increase in global health and nutrition awareness, the demand for high-quality oyster products is increasing. Japan has great opportunities to expand its market.